Singapore on the Thames. It's a concept of the fantasy economics that the Brexiteers, or in this case, the Brexit ultras, really hopeful end destination and true end destination, shall we say, for the UK post Brexit. But wind this all the way back to 2016 when this first phrase started to be bandied about. And you can see interviews of the people now highlighting this. Daniel Hannan, infamously, now the famous one, pushing heavily for this, saying that Singapore on the Thames, the idea was a foolish idea. It's not what they will be doing after all. We're calling for maintaining being in the single market and customs union, and that people want their high regulations and they like their taxes as they are. But the true destination for Singapore on the Thames is to have a practically no regulation whatsoever. We're talking zero regulation along not only just consumer rights, product protections, worker regulations and protections, none of it existing at all. And of course, to have as little tax as humanly possible that they can get away with. And that also means stripping away many social safety nets and such things that we want in this country. Time and time again, people want these features. But this whole idea of trying to realign Britain, trying to take it away from being a European-like social welfare state. But again, Britain founded the idea, became a social welfare state really after, obviously, World War II. Again, polls of people, what policies people want, are overwhelmingly left-leaning towards being, social safety net and having these types of services. But of course, as always, the Brexiteers can't, shall we say, come out with the truth. They have to obfuscate and say, yeah, we want to get rid of regulations. But what regulations do you want to get rid of? Oh, we just want to get rid of regulations, which makes it even more dangerous when, again, currently these guys are in a overwhelming majority. This is why we've seen Jacob Rees-Mogg say very recently that the UK, if Johnson goes, they should have a general election. And I guarantee you, this is what their campaign election will be focused around, a Singapore on the Thames. But it is just a complete reflection of the economic ignorance that the UK is currently in, and even in the world. So again, yet more Brexit fantasy land nonsense. So let's go diving into this article and find out just how really deep this goes. So, as always, before we start, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can always buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So, let's dive into this. This comes from the New European, the title of Talk of Singapore on the Thames Economy is a Mere Reflection of Brexit Ignorance. For a certain kind of Brexit supporter, the dream has always been to use leaving the EU as an opportunity to relaunch Thatcherism. By this time, there would have been no half measures and no betrayal of the Iron Lady's real ambition. In this fantasy, the UK would be set free to slash rules, laws, regulations, taxes, and even safeguards. The new killer elite would rise to the top of the country and would become a ruthless, ultra-efficient economy, with the rest of Europe would look on with such envy that they would soon be demanding similar freedoms to destroy the EU. The name of this fantasy is Singapore on the Thames. The UK would be, as the dreamers imagine, become a highly successful, low-tax, high-productivity entry port for off the very coast of Europe, just like Singapore. It would boom. And if Boris Johnson fails, then you can expect to hear this argument trotted out at the leadership by the contender from the ERG camp, probably its former chair, Steve Baker. But the whole fantasy is based on a complete misunderstanding of not only Singapore's economy, but also the British economy and the country's relationship with the EU. Singapore's economic system is not the tax-free for all that it appears at first sight. True, taxes are low, And with the highest level of income tax reaching a mere 22%, it sounds like a low tax haven. There is also no capital gains tax, with those large amounts of money paying very little, and VAT is just 7%. On the other hand, Singapore is, like all the richest countries in the world, a tax haven for foreign investors and companies. With this, many work for small companies such as Singapore, Luxembourg, and Monaco. And of course, the UK is a huge international economy. Small countries with very few resources rely on attracting huge amounts of foreign, very often dodgy money, and large trading economies don't. Also, although tax income is low in Singapore, many countries have a compulsory saving system on top of taxation, as Singapore does. People have no choice but to save with the Central Provident Fund. It pays for pensions, healthcare, and goes towards housing costs. As you might expect, that doesn't come cheap. Employers pay an extra 17% of each of their workers' wage into that fund, and on top of, each worker must save at least 20% of their wages with the government. And the government then invests that money into its pet projects so that Singaporeans have to pay in but have no say on how it is invested, which blows a hole in the whole claim that Singapore is a low tax economy. But other aspects of Singapore's economy are also not the Thatcherite dreamland you might expect. For a start, the state plays a massive role in the economy because it owns so much of it. Just like the six largest state-owned companies make up just 17% of the value of the Singapore stock market. The state owns not just airlines, transport, power, and project companies, but also media, ports, and engineering businesses. It's strange to think that Brexit supporters are in favour of a massive programme of renationalisation, or perhaps they just forgot about that aspect of Singapore's economy. They also missed the fact that one way the country attracts so much business is because it has brilliant infrastructure. Not just its ports and airports, but also its mass transport and internet connections are world class. There is also, and there also would have to be, an enormous amount of spending on infrastructure to make the UK a similar economy. And this doesn't even mention immigration. Singapore has tightened up the rules recently, but attracting foreign talent and money means letting people into the country in huge numbers. Between 1990 and 2000s, about 2/3 of Singapore population growth came from immigration. The UK is going to have to really roll out the red carpet to attract that many people, and it is not normally very popular with Brexit supporters. There is also seems to have missed out on the fact that about 80% of the homes in Singapore are also publicly built. True, you can buy the property, normally on a 100-year lease, but the state runs the property sector. It owns the land and manages the estates. It also decides how many homes are needed and builds them. It's as if Brexit supporters want to have 4 out of every 5 homes council owned and managed. It seems that Brexit supporters view of Singapore through this very rose-tinted glasses and just likes to cherry pick what they consider the appealing aspects, while ignoring the state's huge role in owning and running key aspects of the economy. But leaving that aside, would it be possible for the UK to become more like Singapore in other aspects? Could the UK become a huge entry point on the shores of Europe, bringing in raw materials as Singapore does, processing and reshipping them around the world? Well, it might have been possible in the past, but not anymore. Because, not to put a too fine a point on it, being part of the EU single market is pretty much essential if you want to promote seamless trade across the continent. A pity, therefore, that we left. Also, in Singapore's manufacturing makes up more than 20% of the economy. The Thatcherites seem to forget that it was Margaret Thatcher who decided that the manufacturing was not the future and services were. Doubling our manufacturing sector and reversing about 40 years of economic change is quite an ask. What becomes, of course, about becoming a heaven for foreign investment, going all out to attract businesses to our shores. Once again, the major reasons for firms to base themselves in the UK has been its membership of the EU. which gave the companies a chance to produce in relatively low-paid, low-tax and low-regulated UK while having seamless access to the whole European economic area. Brexit supporters seem to think that by slashing UK standards, cutting pay, making the labour market even more flexible and cutting business tax, the UK can somehow steal a march on the rest of the continent. Unfortunately, the UK was already just about the most loosely regulated state in the EU, so the gains of going even further are even difficult to see. In addition, the government has just announced a huge increase in employee and employer national insurance rates and a sharp increase in corporation tax. The exact opposite of what might be expected if Singapore on the Thames was your aim, but necessary if COVID and Brexit are decimating your tax take. There is also, of course, the elephant in the room, the EU. The Trade and Cooperation Agreement contains the level playing field provisions. This basically means that the UK must stick with similar, if not identical, standards as the EU or face the consequences, meaning that exports to the EU could face tariffs or even be banned. This also means being anything like the fantasy Singapore of the Brexit dreamland would be economically suicidal for the UK. In short, you can undercut the EU as much as you want, but not if you want to sell there. And of course, some of the Brexit supporters, this is all part of the fantasy. The UK's trade with the EU is suffering not because the UK has left, but because the EU is dying on its feet, and that means the UK will now trade more with Asia as a result. This ignores two key facts. The first is that no one else's trade with the EU seems to be suffering as much as the UK's. And secondly, is that many EU countries trade far more with Asia already than we do. It wasn't membership of the EU that was holding the UK back. Then there is geography. Singapore is at the crossroads of Asia. Shipping across from the vast region must pass it, and this gives it a huge advantage, an advantage that the UK does not have and therefore cannot use. The UK is not a major shipping destination and is not the point of entry for any continent of Europe. So why would anyone ship goods or materials to the UK's small ports, then have to load it up again to send it to the EU? On top of 20 ports in the world, at the top 20 ports in the world tonnage, only 6 are outside the Chinese mainland. 1 is Australian, 2 are Korean, and the other 2 are Singapore and Rotterdam. Of the top 50 container ports in the world, 7 are in the EU and none are in the UK. The UK doesn't even get a look in and never will. We're a large service-based economy outside the EU. We weren't anyone's crossroads, and we can't become the gateway to the EU after leaving, and we can't undercut the EU and maintain our trade links with it in their current form. Singapore on the Thames is a dream that doesn't make sense, but then dreams often don't, which is why using them as a basis for your economic and political development is such a bad idea. And that's the worrying thing that many Brexiteers are destined to try and do. And as was mentioned there, it is very, very likely, of course, any leadership competition, we will probably see this phrase be brought up, the idea of we need to become Singapore on the Thames. But just as it's gone through there, you can imagine and look through your rose-tinted lenses of this is what Singapore does. But then there's the reality. And again, just as it said there, you can't imagine Brexiteers calling for a massive renationalisation of UK industry, reversing about 40 years of economic change that their party made to the UK. You can't all of a sudden start to roll out the red carpet, not only to attract foreign talent, but also businesses, because again, the Brexiteers just won't like it. So many things that we've said before, and I'll say it again. When Brexit fantasy meets Brexit reality, the reality always wins. It always will. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is once again where we are. Yet more fantasies that we will probably be seeing, I think, quite soon, depending what could indeed happen this week, especially if the Sue Gray report comes out. So we're going to have to wait to see what happens there. But as always, Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee. We can always, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.